reservations on the books, which is about 150 more than you normally do. It's a restaurant week and chef decided to change the menu completely and all of your dishes are unfamiliar. You've gone through your prep list 100 times. You're furiously trying to arrange your mise en place in a way that makes sense. As you stand there, nerves just exploding from your body. You're not sure if you're going to puke or pass out, but you're just confident that you fucked something up, you know? It's a new menu change. Of course you missed something on your prep list. And then the ticket printer starts to hum. And you feel that wave of excitement just kind of like rush up through you, and you look at your coworkers. You guys kind of shoot each other the look like, all right, here we fucking go, comrades. Here we go. Let's do this. And then the orders start to come in. Something changes in your brain. All the criticism, the thoughts, the worries, the anxieties, the depression, everything turns off. It's almost like a switch is flipped in your brain where you stop worrying about your future. You stop ruminating about your past. You stop thinking about everything and everyone who's ever wronged you in your life. And the only thing that you focus on is the forever now. The only thing in your brain are the orders in your head and the pans on the stove and the bowls on your station and the plates on the pass. That's all that matters. You don't think about anything else, and for the next 4 or 5 hours, you become Superman. You accomplish the impossible. You do a dance with your coworkers where everybody's wielding something sharp or hot or dangerous in some situation, but you're all managing to maneuver around each other in a way where everything comes out flawless. It's a perfectly orchestrated performance that has required immense cooperation between a team, whether that's big or small. That, my friends, is called a flow state, and when I learned about this, it changed my entire worldview because I finally had a name to describe what the hell was happening in the kitchen, and I finally had a reason to coherently explain to people why I do what I do for a living, even though the industry is toxic and chaotic and damaging and fairly terrible. If we're being completely honest, the industry sucks. But in those moments where we experience group flow, when we are all working together for a common goal, we know our responsibilities, we know what we're doing, the challenge is high, the risk is high, we just get it done. And in those moments during a very successful dinner service, we trust ourselves. We know that we can do whatever we put our mind to, whether that's making 20 steaks in a row on a busy night, or whether it's figuring out a new way of plating or coming up with an allergy plate on the fly during the middle of a totally chaotic dinner service. We know we can do it because that inner critic in our brain isn't there. All that is in our brain is knowledge and confidence and desire to be better. Flow is a scientifically measurable state of consciousness, and it's characterized by 3 main things. So 1, it silences that inner critic in your brain, the shit talking, the self shit talking that we deal with on a constant basis. It also accelerates the point to mastery, so it makes everything that you're doing effortless. And it's also, because we understand it, we understand how to hack it, and that has become the preoccupation of my last 1.5 years, is hacking this state of consciousness to experience this on a daily basis and not just in a small percentage of hours only when I was at work. And I think this is a really interesting concept because I feel like a lot of us struggle in our daily lives because we know what we're capable of, you know? You get us in a kitchen, we turn into superheroes. We have this like superhuman ability to just get shit done. And then when we're not in the kitchen, everything feels like the end of the world. You know, it's like we can show up on time and do more prep in 1 hour than most people could do in 10 hours. But when we get home, feeding ourselves or going to the gym seems like the biggest struggle that we've ever had to overcome. And that's crazy, right? The thing is, it's a different state of consciousness when we are in flow at work in the kitchen and when we are out of flow at home and in real life. And I think that disconnect is what causes a lot of the depression and the anxiety and the mental chaos that we experience as restaurant and hospitality workers, because we know that something better exists. We just don't know how to attain it. And so that's what I really want to help you guys do, because over the course of the last 1.5 years, since I started learning about flow states, I've become kind of obsessed with learning how to hack them. And I've found a way to enter these states on a more regular basis instead of only spontaneously at work when things are going wrong and then all of a sudden everything clicks and you can do anything, you know? I've found a way to get to that point by understanding what gets you to that point. And let's dive into this a little bit, okay? So flow state is a neuroscientifically measured brainwave activity level, right? And it creates this phenomena called transient hypofrontality, which means that for a little while, the front neocortical region of your brain goes silent. They've measured this under MRI scans, and that front neocortical region is where all of our depression and anxiety and craziness lives, right? So we're able to turn that off at work. So now how do we turn that off in our day-to-day lives? And why is this beneficial? Well, for one, flow makes learning enjoyable. You know, it's a lot different when you're forced to learn than when you want to learn, you know? When you're forced to learn, things are seen as a chore. You know, if you don't want to push yourself to grow and change, any opportunity to do that is going to make you angry. We've all seen this in a coworker, you know, it's like that disgruntled coworker who's been a line cook for 35 years and just doesn't ever want to learn anything new because they know how to do what they know how to do and they don't want to fuck it up, because then there's the possibility for others to judge them for not doing it perfectly every single time. But if we deprive ourselves of the possibility of growth, we deprive ourselves of the possibility of pleasure, because growth and pleasure are intrinsically linked. When we're in a flow state, we kind of lose all sense of time and enter into this incredibly receptive state where things make sense and connections are easy. We learn quickly, and it's kind of like opening a sneaky back door into our own consciousness, so we can just do more in a shorter period of time. Think about a really intense dinner service again. You start going and all of a sudden you look at the clock and like 5 hours have passed and it's already 10 p.m. and you just cranked out like 300 plates, and it simultaneously feels like you've blinked and 5 hours went by, and it also feels like you've been through hell and back in the last 5 hours and you're physically and mentally exhausted, but at the same time, your body is just buzzing with energy because you just pulled off the incredible. You pulled off something that most people will never be able to do, and that is an exhilarating feeling. You've reached your potential. You've realized your potential as a cook. And now you've raised the standard for yourself, for what you're capable of and what you know that you can do. This pressure, I think, makes a lot of people nervous. So the thing about flow is that we will never get into flow unless we push ourselves beyond our known limits. Complacency, in this case, is death. Growth is scary, but complacency is death. So there has to be a balance between your competency on a subject and the thoughts of, oh my gosh, this is scary, the struggle aspect. And there's a project that's been heavily researched for the last decade or so called the Flow Genome Project. And one of the creators, Jamie Wheal, has devised this 4-step path through the state of flow. Because I think a lot of us, we get depressed when we realize we're not in this state. But that's the key, right? The key is recognizing that flow is a transient state and not something that our brains can do on a consistent basis. And this knowledge has allowed me to kind of navigate this process a lot easier by understanding the fact that you can't be in flow 24 hours a day. If you are, that's called schizophrenia. So what I really want to illustrate is how flow manifests in the professional kitchen. So hopefully it'll help you guys understand a little bit more about what this does to our brains by making it a little bit more relatable to our lives and not just using fancy neuroscience language or stuff that's beyond our comprehension. So flow has 4 main states, four main stages, okay? The first is struggle, and then there's the release. Then we get to flow, and then there's the recovery stage. So knowing that this is a cyclical thing that happens and not just in or out of flow is going to be incredibly helpful to helping us manage our own brain states throughout the course of the day. So the first stage is struggle. This is where our brain waves are in this agitated beta state where we have these thoughts of like, this is scary, I'm struggling, I don't know if I know what I'm doing, I don't know how I'm going to get this done. That's prep for us, right? For a lot of us, that is prep, especially if you've worked at one of those restaurants where the menu changes on a daily basis. Prep is just this immense state of fucking anxiety for hours at a time where you're just forcing yourself to do things at breakneck speed and compartmentalize in your brain in a way that you could definitely not imagine yourself ever doing in real life. But you pull it off at work, right? During the release stage, when the ticket printer is going off and the first couple orders are rolling in, our brain waves start to slow to a dreamy theta state. We're flooded with nitrous oxide, dopamine. We're confident. We're building our confidence with each order that comes in, each setup that we have perfectly, flawlessly executed. We're flooded with endorphins that allow us to feel no pain. How many times have you grabbed a hot pan or accidentally touched the flat top or, done something where most people would be shrieking in pain and you just don't even notice it? I had a long-running joke with a lot of friends. Every time I'd grab something hot, they'd be like, oh, no, don't touch it. And I was like, no, it's special chef hands. It's fine. It's like your brain just doesn't register pain in those moments. It allows you to do things that most people would never in a million years dream of, It's the state of euphoria. Then we get to flow. We get 20 orders deep on our station. Everything's perfect. Not one mistake. The plates look amazing. You're getting nothing but praise from the servers. Everyone is just working together in harmony. And that's when we get these bursts of gamma rays in our brain. This burst of confidence that allows you to just be and do instead of worry and stress and freak out about everything else in your life that you can't control. Because right now, you can control everything that's going on in your life. In this moment, in this little bubble, with your stove, with your station, with your mise en place, you are in full control. It's exhilarating, isn't it? It's totally intoxicating, especially for those of us who go about our daily lives feeling like we have no control over everything, feeling like we're being pulled in a million different directions. This state reminds us that we can achieve the impossible. We become addicted to it. But what happens when service ends? When you're cleaning and everybody's just kind of buzzing on this energetic high of a flawless service. Confidence is skyrocketed, and what do you want to do? You want to celebrate. You're like, hell yeah, man, we just went through war together. We just got thrown like 20 nuclear bombs, and we as a team were able to diffuse all of that. And the dining room never knew. They never knew the chaos that was unfolding behind the scenes. It makes you feel like you've just accomplished the impossible. And so you want to go out afterwards, right? You want to go out and you want to drink and you want to celebrate and you want to be excited about everything. And then you do this every day for years. Because you're chasing this state of consciousness that you're not even aware of. You're chasing this dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, these brainwave chemical highs. And everything else starts to feel kind of pointless. Because the downside of flow, you're not aware of what flow is. Downside is that the letdown is fucking horrible. Because you go from being a total rock star to being a nobody as soon as you get home. Your friends don't get it. Your partner doesn't get it. Your family definitely doesn't get it. Nobody understands why the hell you would do what you do for $13 an hour. They're like, you have so much talent, you have so much education, so much potential. And you're like, yeah, and I'm using it every day at work in this intoxicating environment that allows me to just be and do and not think about everything else in the world that's going wrong with my life. People don't get that unless they've been there. Who are your friends outside of work? I mean, provided you have them, you know. I found that a lot of cooks end up being friends with artists, actors, stand-up comedians, athletes. Why? Because all of these professions and hobbies put you in a chemically induced flow state. So the last part of flow, the last of the 4-part cycle that comprises this state of consciousness, is recovery. And that is the most difficult stage for all of us. Partially in part to the fact that most of us don't even know that this exists. And in the recovery phase, your brain waves slow down to a deep, deep, deep delta, which is the level of deep sleep and memory consolidation. And it allows us to kind of process and understand what we just did. And that's why we lay awake late at night after a 15-hour day, ruminating over everything that we did wrong on our stations and going through our mental prep lists of what we're going to do differently tomorrow and how we're going to optimize our performance. This is just the recovery stage. It's totally normal. And knowing this cycle helps to relieve the pain of the downtimes. And that's kind of awesome because awareness of this leads to mastery of your own brain. And so I've been doing a lot of research into what triggers flow, right? And how to get ourselves into this state when we're not at work, and how to apply this to our daily lives rather than just the moments while we're in the middle of a busy service. So the good news is there's a couple key elements that have been identified as flow state triggers, and I want to kind of go through those with you guys right now. First and foremost, there has to be some element of risk. And that risk can be physical, it can be emotional, social, intellectual, it can be, social rejection, or it could be financial failure, or, any sort of risk that you can imagine is a huge trigger for forcing you to transcend the boundaries of your own current level of competency on any particular subject. It forces you to get out of your comfort zone. So number one, risk, getting outside of your comfort zone. Number two, you have to have clear goals. And that is important, but what's most important about this one is that your skills and your abilities have to match at this point. If your skills are low and the challenge is high, you're going to get really depressed and you're going to give up. If your skills are high and the challenge is high, you're going to be like totally on it and really excited to continue. But if your skills are high and the challenge is low, you're going to be bored out of your mind. So you need to find a situation where the goals are clear and they align with your skills and ability level. The next of the flow state triggers is concentration. You need to be able to hyper-focus on one thing at a time. And what's better for that than cooking? One ingredient at a time, one step at a time in a recipe. And you can compartmentalize, and you learn to do this over the course of your career. But if you think back to the time where you were starting out as a young cook, one thing at a time, right? The next trigger, loss of self-consciousness. When you're in flow, you don't give a shit because you know that you're doing everything correctly. And even if you have that moment of, I don't know if this is going to work, you still kind of know in the back of your head that whatever happens, you'll figure it out. You will make it work. You will get into that zone where you're confident and maybe you misfire something, but you're able to recover. Flow also distorts your sense of time. 5 minutes feels like 5 hours. 5 hours goes by in the blink of an eye. It's weird and disorienting when you go through a busy service and you realize that you have no concept of how much time has passed. You just kind of like forget to drink water. You forget to go to the bathroom. You forget to eat. Like none of these bodily functions or body processes matter in the moment. And it's not like you're consciously like, oh, I'm just not going to drink water today. It's like, no, I've just been cranking out 100 plates right now and I literally forgot about drinking water. And then you go and you take a sip out of your quart container and then all of a sudden you just down the entire thing because you're so dehydrated and you've neglected your body for the entire shift. You didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happens sometimes, you know? So another thing that characterizes a flow state or triggers a flow state is direct and immediate feedback. It's the ability to adjust your behavior and your movements and your decision-making skills to align with a common goal. Honestly, that was one of the things that I love the most about the professional kitchen was the direct and immediate feedback. It's instant gratification at its finest, you know? You know if you're doing well every second of the day. You don't have to second guess whether your boss thinks you're a piece of shit or not, or whether your boss thinks that you are amazing at what you're doing. You know because they're screaming it in your ear 24/7, right? Whether you're doing awesome or whether you're doing terrible, you know where you stand at your job at all times. And you also know where you stand in your own mind because you know if you're on it that day. You know if you're fucking up. The next challenge is a sense of personal control over the situation. While a lot of times I feel like as cooks, we get frustrated because we don't have control over certain aspects of our life, namely our schedules, our free time, our time when we're not working. When we are at work, we have clear and defined responsibilities that allow us to feel like we are in control of our station. Because it's our station, it's my station, it's not your station. I'm responsible for the prep on there, not you. If my station isn't perfect, it's my fault, I have control over how my night goes by how I choose to plan my day. This is huge because this is something that a lot of people don't ever experience. And in this state, the activity, which for us is cooking, becomes intrinsically rewarding. It becomes effortless. Because we know what we're doing. We know that we know what we're doing. At the same time, what we're doing is also very familiar. So it triggers that need for comfort and security that we have. But we also don't know how many of our orders we're going to need on a given time. So that triggers our uncertainty. So it keeps us on our toes. In a kitchen, we kind of experience group flow, which is really exciting when it happens. And that's when the entire kitchen is on the same wavelength the entire night and everything is perfect. The annoying thing about flow, though, is if you acknowledge it while you're in it, there it goes. How many of you have ever experienced this? You've been in the middle of a dinner rush, right? And everything is perfect. You're totally in flow. And then you look at yourself and you're just like, damn, I am killing it tonight. And then what happens? You get an order. You drop a piece of meat on the ground that you needed. It's going to take you 10 minutes to refire this well-done steak that you just dropped on the ground. And now the whole kitchen is backed up and there it went. It's a fleeting state of consciousness. Because you acknowledged it. So if you acknowledge it and you're not aware of it and how you got there and how to get back to there, it's incredibly frustrating. And I believe this is what causes a lot of the anger outbursts from our coworkers. It's because everything was going so well and then they let a thought into their brain. And then psh, everything's gone. Triggers a massive depression. But the good news is we can learn to control this if we understand it. So I hope that this will inspire you to look into this further and start to really open your mind to the possibility of hacking your own brain by understanding what it is that's happening inside of it. This is like any cuisine, Somebody hands you a Mexican food cookbook and you've never tried it before. What are you going to do? You're going to read about it. You're going to buy the ingredients. You're going to try them. You're going to cook with them. You're going to experiment with them. And then all of a sudden, you just made a kick-ass mole sauce. And you're like, oh, I get it now. Cool. I can replicate this. That's what we're trying to do with our brains here. So I think our challenge as cooks is really to understand what's happening in our brains and approach that like you would a new cuisine. Don't be afraid of it. Be curious. Understand what goes into it. Understand how it works. And understand how to make it work for you. Because the things that block a flow state from happening, which is really what we're all trying to get to, what we're all chasing, these things are easily blocked with arrogance, domination, mismatched skills between coworkers. If you've got 10 people operating at 100% and then one new guy who's kind of fumbling around and kind of messing it up for everybody, it's going to cause a lot of stress and anger because it's dead weight, right? It's just dead weight. So right now we've got a lot of dead weight in our own brains. We've got a lot of work to do, and understanding this will start opening the door to allowing this state of consciousness into your life on a more consistent basis, a more reliable basis. Imagine what your life would be like if you felt that invincible all the time, not just while you were searing a piece of salmon. Imagine if you could be as productive at home as you are at work. Imagine if you could be as happy as you are during a flawless service on a day off. It's possible. You just have to understand what's happening and make a conscious decision to commit to achieving the result that you want. It's easier said than done. I know this, but I am proof that it's possible. And I'd like you guys to be proof of it too. Because we're on the forefront of change when it comes to this. And that in itself should be really exciting. Imagine if you could hack your own brain to feel good all the time, not just a few hours here and there. You can. That's been the central preoccupation of my entire last year and a half, was learning how to hack my own brain. And there's a lot of tools out there that you can use today, There's meditation, which some of you are probably not going to be into, and that's cool. You take your own journey, your own path. It really changed my life and worked for me, and I'm definitely going to be talking about it in the future, but something that's a little bit more immediate and less scary sounding is something called binaural beats. And the principle behind them is that there are these specially engineered playlists that operate musically at the desired brainwave frequency that you're trying to emulate. So if you would like to be in a flow state, the theory is you switch on a playlist that has music that's all in the alpha gamma frequency range, and that will kind of raise your brain. That will kind of raise your brainwave frequency and allow you to enter that state in a much faster and more natural environment. And this is something that I do all the time now, Whenever I'm doing something that I really dislike doing, I'm going to throw on a flow state playlist, and my productivity has increased tenfold in the last year. Things that used to take me hours now take me minutes. And it's really exciting because it feels like you've kind of fixed yourself. So I hope that I can inspire you guys to look into this for yourselves. I'm not pretending to be an expert in any of these subjects here. I'm just sharing my experience, and I'm sharing what worked for me. And I challenge you, throw on a flow state playlist in your kitchen during prep and see what happens. Just do an experiment. Instead of playing the normal rock or rap or whatever you listen to in your kitchen, throw on an ambient flow state playlist and see how your crew responds. See how productivity changes. See how mood increases. It's really crazy to think that we can change our brains with music, but it's scientifically proven that this is a thing that can happen. So now what? We have this knowledge. We have this awareness that this is a possibility. So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to mentally give me the finger and shut off the video? You're going to look into it. Maybe see what it can do for you. Because guys, it can't hurt. You're already hurting more than enough, and listening to an ambient music playlist is definitely not going to make your life worse. It might, however, make it better. And that's my intention, that's my goal. I want to share the things that made my life better in an attempt to make yours better as well. Then hopefully make our industry better, make our industry safer, saner, more relaxed, less chaotic, less toxic, more real. Thanks guys. If you have any comments or suggestions, questions, insights, anything, just drop it in the comments there, and I look forward to seeing where we go.